kind of forget where you're at. I think you're in the States somewhere right now, aren't you?
No, I am in Aurelia, north of Toronto. So I'm pretty close.
Yeah. Only a 4-day drive.
I know. Just around the corner.
Yeah, just down the street, yeah. You're listening to Sacred Space here in CJUM 101.5 FM out of Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada. We're sitting here talking with Uncle this morning. This is the heart talk that one hears too rare these days. Mm. And you have kind of an interesting story on how everything kind of started with you and something that your grandmother had said to you. Mm-hmm. Could you relay that one about what she said about you? I think that's great.
I have an incredible life. Did I tell you that? I am so incredibly blessed. I have been blessed with so many beautiful things in life that many times I just have no idea how to say thank you, because the words thank you become so almost meaningless, just with, oh, thank you very much. You know what I mean? It's just like, it started off, for me particularly, it started off many years ago, where I was told that I have something. My grandmother saw in me something which for her means, I don't want you to think that I think of myself being different than anybody else, because I am not. I am no different than anyone else. But for some reason, when my grandmother saw me, she told people in her world that Angaangaq got it. And this is what I grew up with. No one ever questioned, in my presence at least, what it is that Anakasha, my grandmother, meant when she says that Angaangaq got it. So I grew up knowing that I got it. But when you and I would walk into her presence and she would say just, oh, Angaangaq got it, I would look at you and see what it is that you have and I don't have, or what I have and you don't have. I would notice some snow on my pants and you don't. So I would take the snow off so I can be just like you. I often did that. The thing which amazed me is that no one ever questioned. Everyone just accepted that statement that Angaangaq got it. So that's how I grew up. I have no idea, many times in my life, simply no idea what it means.
Can I interject?
Mm-hmm.
What just hit me, and who am I, right? But what just hit me was it's limitless. That's why there's no you're this, you're that, you're going to make it to this, you're going to make it to that. It's limitless.
Mm-hmm.
What an amazing gift.
You know, now as an adult, I do realize the powerful beauty I've been given. It's just that I need to learn to grow up to become worthy of that. And that really is a challenge and a half. How do you do that? How do I grow up to it and become worthy of that responsibility I've been given? Right. That part no one has yet told me. But I know that one day I need to really realize it and then really live it, not just imagining it.
That you have done, from what I saw and heard and felt, you have done incredibly well.
Oh.
There's so much to talk about. I hope we can fit it in these 2 hours, but let's start with the ceremony and then work ourselves to the beginning and then back to the ceremony again. So we'll do this circular thing. What's happening with the Sacred Fire ceremony that's coming up in July?
In Greenland, I don't know, people, they don't understand what's happening. Let me just tell you I cannot begin from the beginning, which is very old, but they say that the other day we had a cold spell, and that cold spell built and built and built, and then a big ice was born. And then big ice grew and grew and grew, so we moved with the ice. And then at one point she began to retreat, and when she retreated 1 week And we traveled with it, following the ice. We came home. There was no trees. They have all laid down by this big ice. And then it was simply too cold to trees to stand up. Now today, in modern day, we have learned that it takes, on the average, 10 Celsius for 3 months before a tree can begin to stand up. We call it science, so that's quite something. And then that means that there are no trees where I come from, and thus the sacred fire died. I think it's so interesting that the sacred fire died. And what it means is that the only way we have fire is using the seal fat, those small mammals, seals and the Arctic dolphins, the big whales as well, but their fat is much more difficult to liquefy and use as a light. So ever since, the only way we had fire is using the animal fat. But somewhere along the line, somebody said that one day the sacred fire will come home. But she will come home on circumstances unimaginable. When the world needs it most, how would one ever know what the world needs most? And one day that big ice will become soft. Unimaginable how that solid, rock-hard ice will become soft. So all these things, and then the trees will stand again. And when they do, the sacred fire will come home. Because the kind of life I lead, I have often wondered, what does it mean? I remember as a child that one of those days in our village where elders now, parents and elders are together, and they ask the children, go and count the worlds of God, which is the Northern Lights. So we go up to our place, and then there was a ledge where we lay down on the ground and looked down below us where the ocean slants into the earth. Beautiful, beautiful, powerful place. And we were on our stomachs looking down, and then we were talking about the sacred fire, how she will be coming home. I remember talking about, not me, but other people, in older people than me, talking about the big ships. But those days, in the early 80s, the big ships are made of wood. And when the big storm comes, the fire will catch the ship, and then it will burn up. So that's not the way the sacred fire will come home. Then somebody said, airplane, because we see them flying. But we also know that when we look at the airplane, when it's turning, the whole body of the plane turns, and we know that somewhere inside the fire will not do the same, because fire is always up to the Creator. That means that as the big plane turns, the fire will stay up, and then of course it will catch a fire as well. So that's the kind of wonderment we had there many a time to try to figure out what does it mean that the sacred fire coming home like that. So life went on, and then I knew that it is important, not for me, but for my people. Then, ever since 1975, because the way I lead my life, that my parents will invite elders to their home, so I can tell them where I have been, what I have been doing, whom I have met, and then they will send me messages to what it is that I should tell them. We call it a runner. I became a runner for the elders at a pretty young age. So I've been doing it for a long, long, long time. Then, this is what excites me. But then again, I want you to know that I'm a very excitable guy. as my life went on, it became quite clearly that there's something, I don't know if it is within me or it is within those elders who knew, particularly my mother, my father, because then my grandmother had passed on, that it just turned out to be that it is me who's doing the work. And I want you to know, and I truly want you to know that I myself personally never asked for it. That I think it's so important to realize that I myself had never, ever in my life asked for it.
Yeah.
So the reality is now that I am the one who's working on bringing home the sacred fire as a runner for the elders. It was so fascinating that, George, then I started to select where the ceremony can happen. I made the list and I gave it to the elders. I talked to them over the phone. I talked to the elders every single week over the telephone. Every single week I speak to for years now. I've been doing it. I say, this is my, and of course they know their land, so this is my suggestion, this is my suggestion. And sometimes outright they will say, no, that's not going to work. Other times they will say, let's talk about it. Gradually we came to the point where selection happened. The chairman of the Elders Federation of Greenland and my father's youngest brother, my uncle, I took him to a site because they had selected that site. So I went up there prior to select where the sacred fire pit would be, and then I showed them. We walked around those 40 areas in which I have selected where I believe the fire pit can be located. But I said, but this is not my decision. It is yours. The elders have to decide where it's going to be. So I walked away as far as I could. And then finally, I'm a weak person. I knew I shouldn't look back. I don't know about you, George, but I battled with something called ego.
Yeah, I tend to have that myself.
You too?
Yeah.
We must be the only ones in the world who battles with the ego. That
I think so.
Because of my ego, I could not hold back, and I looked back to see where they are at. But I also knew that I shouldn't, because I didn't want to influence them where the fire pit would be located. So I ran even further away. Finally, I see these two beautiful elders with their hands up, waving at me, beckoning me to come to them. And I ran on a tundra. I was so thrilled, so excited, incredibly. But at the same time, I knew that I just couldn't burst out, because it is their responsibility to select. And they did select the site. What I love it most of it is that when I came to them, they both gave me a hug. And then they took the medicine of the earth, literally part of tundra. And they both of them just put their hands up to the sky. And this is the way the people on the top of the world do it. The medicine of the earth, lift it up to the sky so the Great One can see that they are so in a good way. And then the chairman of the Elders Federation spoke beautiful words. I mean, if I had the skill to record it, I would have done it, but I didn't have the skill. He said to the effect that I'm standing before you, and you can see me that I'm in a good way, holding his hand up as far as he can reach. My prayer is that you will accept this site to be the sacred site for the coming home of the sacred fire. Then he put it down on the earth. My uncle did the same. He put his medicine down, and then he touched me, asking me to do the same. So I did the same. And then they said prayers. They spoke to the Great One, like he was just right there next to us, explaining to him what they have seen. And when they finished, again my uncle touched me, bring your drum. So I brought my drum, and I chanted. And when we finished, we hugged each other, And they both said, time to go.